Good afternoon. How are we doing, everyone? Welcome to the global stage right here at Switch 2025. Have we had our lunch yet so far? A little bite to eat, some coffee. We've all had coffee, so yes, coffee indeed. My name is Bobby. It's great to be back with you here at the global stage for day 2. This is the stage where we connect businesses, innovators with markets around the globe. Because sometimes we want to open our business in our home country, our home city, respectfully. Of course we want to. But sometimes our ideas might not work locally, but they might work in another country. And that's what this session is all about over the next couple of days right here at the global stage, is to bridge people together, bring them together. Venture capitalists, innovators, entrepreneurs, all can meet here and learn about each markets respectively. So now let's talk about our friends over at Canada. We're talking Canada-Asia Innovation Bridges, scaling deep tech through collaborative R&D. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists. First, our moderator, please welcome. He's brand new to Singapore. Let's give him a big Singapore welcome. Barrett Bingley, Regional Director at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. Yes, hello Barrett, welcome to Singapore. Next, we've got Harpreet Singh, Regional Director of NUS Enterprise. Big round of applause for Harpreet. Next, we have Dr. Michael Gracils, Founder and Managing Partner of Antares Ventures. And last but not least, give it up for Perry Kwan, Director of International Innovation at the National Research Council of Canada. Yeah, Perry's got fans. Gentlemen, the stage is yours.
Great. Thank you for that high energy introduction and welcome to Singapore. As you heard, I'm Barrett Bingley, the Regional Director with the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. And the reason I've just moved to Singapore is we have just opened a new office here, the first Asia Pacific Foundation office outside of Canada. And this is one of the first events after our official opening that we're kicking off with. It's very exciting to have 3 leaders in technology with me on stage. Now, let me just set the scene a bit for those of you who might not be that familiar with Canada. Across sectors, from quantum computing to artificial intelligence and clean tech to advanced materials, Canada's innovators have become well known across the globe. Some of you in the AI space might know AMI, Vector, and Mila, 3 of the leading global institutes in applied AI. We have Sanctuary AI pushing the frontier of human-like robotics. And companies like D-Wave and Xanadu are redefining quantum technology. CarbonCure and General Fusion are pioneering sustainable solutions with global impact. And what links all of these companies, as well as the institutes and universities, is cross-border collaboration. And that's going to be really the theme of this panel. Now, the most important cross-border collaboration that we're all focused on right now is the innovation of winning the first World Series of the millennium for the Toronto Blue Jays. So I think that's what we could all be looking forward to, either on Saturday or on Sunday. But before I jump into questions with our panelists and introduce them, I want to go to you, to the audience, to help our panelists understand who they're speaking to. So my question to you is, and this is just a raise your hand type of question, no fancy polling. Raise your hand if you have Canada engaged in your commercial ecosystem in some way. Are you using Canadian technology? Do you have venture funding from Canada? Are you importing or exporting? Or have you employed the brightest of the bright Canadian scientists and engineers? Hands up. Who's doing this? Okay. So we have a nice mix of fans of Canada and people who are new and learning about the country. All right, excellent. Thank you for that. So, as a preview in today's panel, at the end we're going to have Perry Kwan, Director of International Innovation, speaking to us about the Eureka Network, as well as Canada-Singapore Collaborative Industrial Innovation Program. Harpreet Singh is going to be speaking to us with his NUS hat on, talking as the regional director, and I love this title, Innovation Network Architect, talking about Singapore, Canada cross-border collaborations. And Michael will be speaking to us about his investments into Canadian firms, including Ayrton Energy and Aslan Energy, two of your investee firms who have just won major startup competitions in Singapore and in Jakarta in the last couple of weeks, which is fantastic news. So we're looking forward to hearing about this. Perhaps I can first go to Perry. Could you help us understand about these two programs I mentioned? How does it work? How do people get involved with them? And what have been some of the outcomes?
Yeah, so I've got a few opening remarks, which I'll certainly touch on that. Yeah, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to join you here at Switch 2025. Switch has become one of the most important platforms for connecting the global innovation ecosystem, bringing together entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, policymakers to shape our collective future. So events like this are more than just about dialogue. It's about building bridges of collaboration and translating innovation into real world impact. So I just want to start off with a few observations in the global context. So we're entering a dynamic decade where small, medium-sized enterprises are navigating an increasingly complex global market. Global economic shifts are shaping supply chains, creating new pathways for market access and collaboration. Emerging trade dynamics are driving SMEs to adopt more adaptive and resilient approaches to competitiveness. And there's transformative technologies happening, especially AI and quantum computing, that are shaping industries at an unprecedented pace. So these technologies also raise new questions about governance, safety, and trust, requiring us to balance innovation with thoughtful oversight. So from climate change to health crises and digital transformation, the challenges we face, they're global, they're interconnected, and can't be solved in isolation. So over the next 10 years, it'll be defined by our ability to collaborate across borders, share insights, leverage complementary strengths to unlock new potential. So just a bit about the National Research Council and our role in Canada's innovation ecosystem. So the NRC is Canada's largest federal research and innovation organization with over a century of history, advancing science and translating knowledge into impact. From enabling the mass production of insulin a century ago to today's work in aerospace, quantum, and clean energy, our mission is clear. It's to turn research excellence into solutions and improve lives. So through the Industrial Research Assistance Program, IRAP, which is the division that I work for, we help businesses grow through innovation. We provide advisory and financial support to over 9,000 Canadian companies annually. And we help Canadian firms innovate, scale, and connect with partners around the world, including many here in Asia. And IRAP, we're not just a funding program. We help build global innovation bridges, enabling Canadian SMEs to collaborate and scale internationally. So just a few thoughts, even though we'll go into it in the Q&A in more detail, but on Canada-Asia Innovation Partnerships, which is a main theme of this session. So Canada brings foundational science strength, AI, quantum, clean tech, biotech, and a trusted research culture. Asia brings rapid adoption cycles, large-scale infrastructure, talent, and supply chains. Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy underscores that collaboration with the region is a long-term priority for growth and resilience. Canada's partnerships in Asia demonstrate the power of co-innovation. With Japan, we're advancing secure quantum communications, AI for healthy aging, and aerospace technologies. With Singapore, India, and Taiwan, we're driving joint R&D in clean tech, health sciences, and digital innovation. And programs like the Eureka Network, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, and the Canada-Singapore Bilateral Co-Innovation Program are pivotal to this work. So since 2012, Canadian companies have joined over 400 projects worth over 1.5 billion Canadian dollars. And our Canadian companies have collaborated with over 600 partners in over 35 countries. So these projects have delivered tangible results: market expansion, accelerated revenue growth, and long-term strategic partnerships. Canada, in the past year, has co-chaired the Eureka Network with Germany. And it really shows our commitment to expanding global innovation. Just a few short comments. I'm taking up quite a bit of your time, Barrett, but just a few more. Just on scaling deep tech, which is another theme of this session, at a high level. Deep tech in AI, quantum, advanced materials, biotech. It's transforming industries and creating new economic frontiers. So at NRC, we're advancing AI applications and optoelectronic components for next generation computing, biological system simulation, and molecule discovery for clean energy. So we're committed to developing trustworthy, transparent, responsible AI, particularly in healthcare, manufacturing, and transportation. But innovation doesn't stop at discovery. Through collaborative R&D, we bridge lab to market, accelerating commercialization and scaling globally. So a major opportunity for NRC is to empower small, medium-sized enterprises and build resilient ecosystems. So SMEs, which in Canada are defined as companies with under 500 employees, which includes startups, are the engine of innovation. They're agile, creative, and vital to our economies. So by giving them the right networks, resources, and platforms, we empower them to tackle global challenges and seize new opportunities. International co-innovation creates pathways for SMEs to scale globally and contribute unique insights and solutions. So together, we can build resilient innovation ecosystems that can support sustainable growth and deliver solutions in areas like climate action, health, and advanced technologies. So just some concluding remarks. So Canada sees Asia not only as a market, but also as a strategic partner in shaping the future of innovation. And our Indo-Pacific strategy reflects this commitment. Switch is one of the platforms where we turn that strategy into action. So together, we can scale deep tech solutions, strengthen innovation ecosystems, and create lasting global impact. So thanks, and I look forward to the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Perry. It is challenging to encapsulate everything that NRC does, including in the international program. But thank you for the thumbnail sketch. And I wanted to turn now to Michael. You've heard from the government. Can you give us your perspective on that sort of scaling globally, what it means to be an investor in deep tech? How do you help companies going global? And just your perspective on working with the Canadian ecosystem.
Yeah, so maybe let me set the stage and also quickly introduce what we are. So Antares Ventures is a Singapore headquartered deep tech specialized venture firm. We back global innovators and help them scale their impact here in Asia. Why Asia? Because this is where the demand is. 80% of the GDP growth in cities is here. 60% of the energy demand growth of the world is here. More than 50% of the world's food demand growth is here. And at the same time, this is a region where there's an acute crisis and a need for innovation. Now, what's the kind of collaboration between Canada and Asia? Well, I think it's very simple. Canada, as my colleague already shared, has the innovation, has the science, has the credibility, and I think has the global mindset. It needs perhaps a market to scale innovations, because those deep tech founders need access to global markets to kind of scale to venture level and reach outcomes that their investors desire. I think Asia as a market offers that demand, but also needs that innovation and provides fertile ground for collaboration, particularly through combination of private and public partnerships. On the private side, we as Antares collaborate very deeply with leading industrial players across the region, and they've always shown interest to the best world-class innovation. I think we've been able to convince many of them that our companies, our Canadian portfolio companies, are offering exactly that. And I think on the governance side, I think again, there has been, from the Singapore government and other governments in this region, a welcoming attitude to global innovators. And let me just use two examples to illustrate that. Our two portfolio companies that you mentioned earlier. Ayrton Energy is an Alberta-based company focused on innovation in hydrogen storage and transport. Singapore wants to be a hub for green fuels. We'll see a future in Asia where there'll be countries like Australia or India that are blessed with good sun, wind, and are able to produce renewable energy at a very cheap cost, are able to translate that in a molecule like hydrogen. And then there's countries like Japan and Korea that need renewable energy and can't produce it all domestically and are keen to import that to green fuels. Now, what you need is a solution to transport that from one place to another. That's what our company does. Our company just won recently Temasek Livability Challenge. On the back of that, Temasek Foundation and the broader Singapore ecosystem have been extremely welcome and supportive. And since that, they're engaged with maritime players in the region, with oil and gas players in the regions, petrochemical players in the regions that want to kind of pilot their technology. Just 2 weeks ago, another of our portfolio companies, Aslan Renewables, which is a Ontario-based company focused on micro hydropower, has, and if you think about this region, there's lots of rivers and a lot of hydropower that could be untapped with solutions that are at smaller scale, more aligned with the needs of local communities. That's what Aslan does, exactly that. They now have more than $25 million of projects in development in Indonesia, and they again won a local award here, which has given them the publicity. And I think, to me, the bridge is exactly that. Asia has innovation, science, credibility. Canada has the innovation, science, and credibility, in the topics that we've discussed before: AI, clean tech, life sciences. Asia has the markets, has the demand, has the need for innovation, and has also the supply chains to localize solutions and produce them at local cost. I think, bridging that can really deliver, in our view, excellent returns for everyone involved, the founders, the industrial partners here, and investors like us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I can see a theme emerging around the kind of the credibility, and as Perry put it, the trusted research culture as being kind of foundational strengths that Canada has to offer. And then Asia is the other sort of matching piece, right? In terms of the demand. For those of you who've had your head buried in Switch this past week, you might not have seen that Canada's Prime Minister was here in Singapore for 2 days, meeting investors, meeting with Prime Minister Wong. And Canada's Prime Minister made the announcement that he has the intention to double non-US exports to an additional $300 billion within a decade, of which he said most of that will be coming from Asia. So there's absolutely a sort of top-tier recognition that Asia is incredibly important to Canada's future, and everything that we're talking about here is going to contribute to that. So I'd like, on the same theme of collaboration, I'd like, Harpreet, if you could talk a little bit about your experience with NUS, with Canada, what you've been doing in the last few years, and some of the green shoots that have come out of that.
Sure. Thank you again for inviting me. I think before I begin, I'll just do a quick shout out to a few people. First, the Canadian High Commission. I think you're a solid partner and supporter of whatever the National University of Singapore has done in Canada, Toronto. So that's one. Two is Switch as well. This is my first time attending Switch after having been in Toronto for the last 7 years. So it's amazing to see all these people here, collaborating and colliding. I think that's an important point, because a lot of the things that I will talk about in a minute is about creating collisions, creating opportunities for people to meet, people to interact, people to collaborate. So this is great. And finally, the Blue Jays, of course. I'm Singaporean, so I'm a bit of an outlier here. I lived in Toronto, Canada for 7 years, or as the locals say, Toronto. So that's how you can tell if somebody's been to Toronto for a while. I just came back, and I'm very privileged to be part of this panel here to share my experiences and also talk about how the National University of Singapore looks as at Toronto for starters, but also Canada as a region for collaboration and sending some of our brightest young students, talents, startups abroad. So what am I doing here? If you ask me to tell you the strategy of where to invest the next $1 billion in the next big company, maybe I'm not the right person. I work a little bit more upstream in research, academia, finding talent to become the next innovator, become the next startup founder that perhaps could start Carousel, Shopback, PatSnap. All these are companies started by the program that we run, the National University runs, the National University of Singapore runs over the last 23 years. So this is my story about Toronto/Canada. The University of Singapore, let me just brag a little bit and sound very un-Canadian here. The National University of Singapore is now ranked, I mean, depends on which metrics you look at, amongst the best universities in the world, top in Asia, number 8 in the QS World Rankings. So I'm done bragging. How did we get here? Amongst many reasons, but I think innovation, trying to create a culture of entrepreneurship and startups has led us to be where we are today. This program that I run in North America was born 23 years ago, so I don't take any credit for it. But the reason why we wanted to do this is to send bright young talent from Singapore or from the University of Singapore to spend 1 year working in startups overseas in the top ecosystems in the world. So we launched in the Bay Area in 2002. The world was a different place, much, much different place. Today, we are in about 20 top ecosystems. And about 8 years ago, someone asked me, why are we not in Toronto? That someone happens to be Philip Yeo, Mr. Philip Yeo. For those of you who know Singapore a little bit better, you know that Philip Yeo is known as the Maverick of Singapore. He wrote a book called Neither Civil Nor Servant. Make of that what you will. So he's a U of T, University of Toronto alumnus, and he said we should consider Toronto as one of the top ecosystems in terms of tech, AI, so on and so forth. He had foresight. So there, lo and behold, I went and we created this program in Toronto in partnership with the U of T. And over the last 7-8 years, COVID obviously hit us. Over the last 7-8 years, we've seen about 150 young, smart people from Singapore spend a year in Toronto working in deep tech, leading AI companies. Now, why Toronto, right? I don't think you need me to tell you something that you can find on ChatGPT. But for me, I think what the coolest thing was that the godfather of AI, right? Prof. Geoffrey Hinton lived like a stone's throw away from where I did. And he's in Toronto. He's in the University of Toronto. He just won the Nobel Prize in Physics. Was it this year, last year? I keep losing track of time. I think this year, 2025. Toronto is an emerging ecosystem. It is got top universities, has top talent, has top research, has funding as well. And the thing about Toronto/Canada that attracts me the most is actually Singapore and Canada have a lot of things in common, right? We are both surrounded by bigger neighbors, maybe in terms not just geography, but in terms of the economy. But we have to find creative ways to fend for ourselves and to survive, right? And that's why the potential for collaboration is so rich. The only thing that inhibits us is the distance. We're so far away, right? So if Singapore and Canada were next to each other, my goodness, the things that we could accomplish together. The diversity, the kind of education systems that we provide for our people, I think those things are top notch, both in Canada and Singapore. And that's why I think I'll stop here by just finishing and talking about the potential for collision, for creating opportunities for young companies, young people to go both ways, experience both ecosystems, realize the opportunities, and then go on and do better things. They call Singapore the gateway of Asia. I don't want to call Canada the gateway of North America. I think that's rude, right? But I think the potential to use Toronto, Montreal, BC as potential to do much, much bigger things is there. It's just a matter of seizing it now.
Right. Thank you for emphasizing the people-to-people aspects of this. They're really important. Thank you to Philip Yeo for suggesting that to you all those years ago. That is lovely to see that program has continued even through the challenges of COVID, which made traveling very difficult. So I've got way more questions than we have time to get to, but I do want to. I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to see if the audience has a burning query you'd like to pose. But let me first go back to Perry and to Michael on the same question. Both of you mentioned scaling deep tech globally and the importance of that. So I wanted to ask you to drill down, if you could, onto the challenges of scaling deep tech. And in your particular expertise, how are you helping startups and founders overcome those challenges?
Okay. Yeah, what are the biggest challenges in scaling deep tech? Well, I think establishing trust with innovation partners and intellectual property management are very common challenges. And negotiating IP ownership, licensing, and data sharing, it takes time. In Canada, we address this by offering advisory support to Canadian firms from day one of their international collaboration journey. We offer support to help the companies engage with legal and IP experts early on. And we use standardized intellectual property right agreement templates and offer guidelines that have been developed through networks like Eureka and IRAP. Another big challenge is capital intensity. So for deep tech R&D, it often requires substantial investment and specialized equipment. So to de-risk this, Canada, we leverage public funding like IRAP to attract and secure private sector capital. Another challenge, I'd say, is the R&D and commercialization timelines. In deep tech, such as technology like quantum, it's an emerging technology, and the markets are nascent in terms of their commercial applications. So R&D and commercialization cycles can be quite long. So to de-risk this in NRC, we use a phased scale-up approach. So we start by working with companies at a smaller scale, like proof of concept projects, pilot projects, and then move up to smaller technology and market validation type projects before we commit the larger R&D dollars to bigger co-innovation projects. So yeah, these are some of the barriers. These are some of the things we do. And it really helps shorten the time to scale up and protect our clients and our partners' IP and financial interests.
Good. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I'm gonna be focused on Canadian innovators because that's I think the framing of this debate, and also be a little bit provocative. Listen, a couple of years ago, for the average Canadian founder, going global meant only one thing, which is you go south down the border. You go into a market that is huge, where people speak the same language, it feels, smells, looks the same. People are very transactional, easy to do business. That world, unfortunately, is shaken. Now, then here we are in Asia, and we're making the message, listen, massive demand, come over here. Well, this is not one market to start with. It is not one culture, it's not one language. And I think from Canada, we've had to spend a lot of time just educating our founders about the markets here, and also about how to attack this massive beast that Asia is, and help them think through that you don't land in Asia, you land in Singapore, or you land in Jakarta, or you land in Seoul, and you pick a few markets. Number two, this is not a region where business is done transactionally. This is a region where trust, relationships matter. And the way we do that is by leveraging our trust that we've built up with our corporate and industrial partners, and the investment we've made to cultivate an image that we were able to bring them world-class innovators so that they can build on that. And then number three is there is a need to, as we say in startups, you need product market fit. So if you want to come to Asia, you need product market fit here, which may mean that you need to rethink, redesign lower the cost, localize your supply chains, understand local regulations before you move here. So I think that's the challenge, kind of in what your government wants to do in reorienting trade here. There is, I think, a real massive opportunity. This is Asia's century. This is where growth is going to be, but it requires a more orchestrated approach and education to founders across market insight, go-to-market partnerships and trusted relationships, supply chain localization, and local talent. And what we've seen is that on the flip side, we have found Canadian founders to be very open-minded, and actually to be very globally minded in this day. Still, I think the culture, Canadian culture, I think Canadian society has kind of remained balanced and globally minded. Actually, in a lot of our startups, we also find that amongst the management team, there's people of Asian descent, which actually helps having affinity with what's happening here. So we have been more successful with Canadian innovators than with people from, won't mention the name, but other countries. So I think it is possible, but it takes an effort, coordinated effort, where we as an investor firm need to be quite hands-on involved, and probably not just us. We've collaborated closely with TCS, with ADC, and with other agencies that help founders come over here.
Thank you. Clearly, again, the people-to-people ties help make everything easier. It's not easy, but the stronger people-to-people and cultural ties help to make things easier. I also think it's amusing how our southern cousins have become like Voldemort, and no one wants to say the name. But before I go to my next question, would anyone like to shout a question to us? I'm not sure if we have a mic, but if we do, we'd love to hear from the audience as well. No? Oh, wait. Sir at the back? Yes. I can.
Hello. Hi. Thanks, everyone. My first time in Singapore. I'm part of the Canadian delegation. Very fortunate to be here. A lot of the discussion that I've been listening to and really appreciated is the importance of understanding business and business culture here. The question I actually have for the panel is, what's your view on Canadian business culture and VC culture, in the sense of, do you think for us to take advantage of these opportunities, we have to adopt greater risk or an appetite for risk? I say that from the perspective, my sensibility relative to whether it's our neighbors to the south or other jurisdictions I've been exposed to, we still have a relatively conservative mindset. So your views on that?
Perry, do you want to?
Yeah, I can take that one.
Yeah?
So I'm in government now. I've been for 10 plus years, but I was in industry. I was a startup entrepreneur, took a company public. And I'd say that Canadian entrepreneurs, certainly in, say 20 years ago, were quite risk averse, and weren't really looking globally as much as they should have. So I'd say it's changing though. And I think part of it is the Government of Canada, NRC, the Trade Commissioner Service. I think we provide some really good support to help de-risk global expansion. Also, as you know, we're having economic problems in Canada due to our linkages, strong linkages to the United States. So Canadian companies, they're really forced to now look for the market diversification and other revenue streams beyond the United States. So I think it's changing, and certainly leverage the Government of Canada services to help you in that journey.
I think just building on what I said before, I think the coming to Asia, it needs to come with a longer term mindset, and it takes a bigger investment, because unlike the US, where again there was this intimacy of kind of knowing how the culture works, transactional business mindset, that's not how Asia works. So if you kind of want to expand into Asia, you need to probably double the timeline that it takes. But then at the same time, what I've always said to our portfolio companies, you'll come here and your solution will be unique. you'll come here and you'll find industrial partners that are looking for innovation and looking to scale you, or governments that are willing to kind of partner with you. And so I think it is, if you come with an understanding of how this ecosystem works and who can help you scale, it's absolutely feasible, but it's a very different approach. And that's, yeah, I would say it takes, willingness to take a risk and to take a bet.
I'll do a 30-second answer to that as well. I've worked with about 150 startup founders and entrepreneurs in Canada, in Toronto. You don't lack ability. They're smart. They're building products that perhaps are even better than anything I've seen in the world. But I think coming back to the point of taking risk, I think it's easy to look south first, right? Because that's where accessibility is, and just getting the cultures, it's similar, right? So coming to Singapore is a huge risk. I understand that. Or coming to Asia. But I think it's about really taking that step into the unknown, taking that step into finding partners who are already here and doing interesting things that can help you. I think that's important. The other thing I would also say is that, Canada has been built on diversity, right? I mean, a lot of immigration, a lot of people have helped to make the country what it is. So it's ironic now that people are actually getting very comfortable staying in Canada. So you got to embrace a different form of, I would say, diversity, but getting out there, meeting new people and taking different risks. That's what I would say.
Right. Good. Thank you for that question. It's great to have the Canadian delegation here. Now, Harpreet, actually, you started touching on some of the point I was going to ask you about. So as a wrap up here, maybe you could expand. That was a very Canada-focused question. Maybe you could expand. What advice would you give to startups and researchers here in the region, Singapore and the broader Southeast Asia region, looking to engage in Canada-Asia collaborations? Where should they start? What should they watch out for?
So exactly what Michael said, but I think I'm looking at it from the other side of the coin. So Michael is looking at a lot of companies from that part of the world coming here. I would probably look at the other side. If I'm being absolutely practical, startups need money, need talent, and need space. Maybe luck as well, if you want to talk about it. The talent is there. Canada has some of the top universities in the world. The National University of Singapore, the universities in Singapore, the top ones here. A lot of students want to go to Canada either on exchange or on innovation programs. Two is you got space. You got a lot of space. Money is, it depends where you go and who you ask and how you ask, right? But the potential is there. So I will tell companies in the region here, while there is a lot of potential here, don't get me wrong, because I think it's at the stage where growth is really exponential. But the opportunities in Canada are also there because they want to collaborate. I think that's one of the big pieces that the National University of Singapore has seen. So we have worked in the US, we have different locations, we have worked all over Europe as well. But in Toronto, in Canada, one thing I have appreciated, and that's why I started with the Canadian High Commission, is that there's a spirit of collaboration because to some extent we're cousins, distant, but we see eye to eye on a lot of things. Diversity, the way we compete in a region of bigger neighbors and bigger partners. I know my time's up. I can go on and on about this, but I think it's really about recognizing the opportunity and making that trip, that long trip, to go there and see for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. That actually is a really nice way to wrap things up. Canada and Singapore are actually more than cousins. We're both members of the Commonwealth, both members of the CPTPP. What I heard, and to wrap the panel up, I think the takeaways really is that Canada has that strong and trusted science and technology foundation. We have the cultural, brew, the great connections that is going to lead to an interest in this region and the professional the professional expertise to take it forward in Asia, which might not always have been the case a couple of decades ago. Right? And there is, as you've heard, clearly support at every level for companies as they build and go from just an idea through to internationalization with funding, et cetera. There's assistance. So please afterwards come and speak to our panelists, come and talk to the trade commissioners here, to your provincial reps, et cetera, and to the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. And the last thing I'll say is, if you like this type of discussion, the type of people who are on the stage, we're going to do this in a big way over the course of 3 days in February, the Canada and Asia Conference. And we'll be talking about innovation, technology across sectors, including agriculture, energy, infrastructure, data centers, et cetera. If you want more information, please come and talk to us. And with that, I'd like to thank our panelists and thank you for listening. Thanks, guys.
Big thank you to our panelists here as well. Can we do a group photo, gentlemen? Let's do a group photo together here.